Hi everybody. Sorry about that little delay. I was just getting organised. I just wanted to make sure that I was actually broadcasting. So hi, I hope some of you are around to join me. But I just thought I'd do a little impromptu Facebook Live because a few of you have actually asked me to show you how I use distress inks to colour with this week, after you saw me do just like a couple of little colourings. And I don't get to colour anywhere near as much as I would like to these days, but I'm really into watercolouring at the moment. So I've kind of, I have all my Copics in front of me and everything, but we all go through things through phases as crafters, don't we? And we kind of, one thing's in, and then the next month something else is in, and we swap and change. And I'm in a definite watercolour phase at the moment, and it's something that I've always loved doing. I'm not a watercolour artist. I wish I was. I would love to train properly and everything. But anyway, so I don't want to waffle too much. I just want to get to colouring, really, because I know some of you, there's a few comments, and there was somebody who didn't even know that you could actually colour with distress inks. So I just thought that I would kind of show you, there are some amazing people out there that do amazing things with distress inks. Tracy Payne, her colouring is absolutely sublime with distress inks. So check out Tracy's blog. I don't actually do it anywhere near as much as I would like to, but every time I do, I promise myself that I'm going to do more, because I really love how it always turns out. Anyway, so I'm going to be colouring in. We've just launched our little Fuzzy Puffs range this weekend, which I'm sure you've seen plastered all over the group. So I'm going to actually colour in one of these images. So we've got like two little hedgehogs, and the hedgehogs are called, there's actually three hedgehogs. This is the one that I coloured earlier in the week, if you didn't see it. This is actually a slightly different one. This is the first one I did, and then I did another one that was the same, that I tidied up and put on a card. And this little hedgehog, I've wanted to do a hedgehog for a very long time, and just to, people often ask me where my inspiration comes from, and she's called Early. Okay, she's Early Hedgehog. And the reason she's called Early Hedgehog is that we used to have someone called Claire Earle, who was part of the design team. And Claire was a really good friend of mine and several other people on the team. And she actually looked after and rescued hedgehogs with some of her friends. And sadly, Claire actually passed away last year, which was really devastating to quite a few of us on the team. And although she'd been really poorly for quite a long time and had lots of different issues and stuff, it really came as a massive shock. So Little Early Hedgehog is named after Claire, and she was my inspiration for doing it. So we're always thinking of you, Claire. So this is like a really special image for me, so I wanted this to be the first one that I actually coloured. So this is done with distress inks, and with distress, what actually happens is you get a look of watercolouring, but it's kind of a bit strong. You can go either really, really soft, or you can go really, really strong with it. And the best way to use them, obviously, because they are distress inks and they're water soluble, is to actually use watercolour card. And basically that's what I've done here. So I've used, this is called Bristol board. And there's two different types of watercolour paper. So basically you get one that's really smooth, like this one is. And this is, I always get this the wrong way around. This is hot press when it's smooth. And it's just in the manufacturing process. And it means that it's just, the paper is more condensed and more pressed. So it's smoother. But what happens is when it's smoother, it actually has less tooth in the paper. And what that tooth means, I'm going to explain this because I feel like you need to know this if you're going to do any kind of watercolouring, because it does actually make a difference. Excuse my stomach if you can hear it growling. Basically, the tooth of the paper is actually the fibres in your paper. So if you have less, it's not less fibres, but if those fibres are more compressed, then basically it kind of makes less tooth. So there's less space between each fibre to actually absorb the water and absorb the pigment that you put onto it. So therefore, if you're actually using a really smooth low tooth paper, it's actually going to be a little bit harder to actually blend and to get the ink to go into the paper than it would a cold press paper where the tooth is actually really loose. So the difference is, I've got two here. So this is actually a cold press. I don't know if you can see that here. There you go. So the texture. So on a cold press paper, you'll get a lot more texture. And the texture is basically just formed by the fibres in the paper being looser. So therefore, there's more air and more space between the fibres. And therefore, the fibres can actually soak it up. It's a bit like a plant pot. You know when you have a plant and it's all the soil's really hard, rock hard in the summer and it gets compressed. And then when it rains, it all sits on the top and it won't soak in. It's like that. So that's your hot press, that's your smooth board. And then the compost and the soil that's really loose that you've just planted and it just absolutely drinks the water. That's like your cold press. That's the best way that I can explain it. Different things, you know, I use both. This is a smooth is usually, a hot press is usually a bit more expensive. But I actually find it a little bit more tricky to work with. Not difficult, just a bit trickier. It just takes maybe a little bit more time. So, but anyway, it gives you a really nice smooth image, which for crafting is maybe more kind of what we want to achieve. But it's up to you, you know, people like different things. So anyway, we've got, so I kind of went off on a tangent there. I'm sorry, I keep going off camera here. It's where my camera is. So here are our three little early hedgehog images. So really cute. We've got a little side view here. She's holding a little balloon and then she's got her little dandelions here. So really adorable. So these are called Fuzzy Puffs. These are actually in the store. Then we actually have Scruffy the dog. So we've got two Scruffies. And there's another one. Oh, what have I done with him? There's another one that I've coloured. I'll find it in a second. As usual, my desk is an absolute, oh here it is a tip. So we've got Scruffy the dog, and I did actually do a little eye patch for him here. The really great thing is that I've done this really soft, so if you don't want a dog with an eye patch, or you know, like a little patch on his eye, then you can actually get away with that not being there. By the time you've coloured it, it was like there as a guide. So here's the one that I actually coloured. So again, this is on the really smooth board, and again using the distress inks. And I had to do this candle effect here because I am quite messy. And it's not that I'm messy, I just seem to get it everywhere. And it's just me as a dirty crafter, you know, as a messy crafter. I was going to say dirty crafter there, but maybe I won't. So I've done this candle effect basically to cover up loads of smudges that I've got here off my hands. So, but it's quite nice. And I just love, to me, distress inks kind of enable you to have that real vintagey look to your colouring that you don't tend to achieve quite so easily with Copics. You can do it maybe a bit more with pencils, but I just, because I'm that vintage girl, you know, I really, really like that. It's just very, very soft. And, you know, if you see all those Magnolia stamps, you know, a lot of the girls that colour Magnolia, they actually love using the distress inks on those. So here we have our little mouse. So this is Maisie Mouse. So she's baking here, and then here she's writing a card and sending a gift to somebody. So really cute. And then we have the ones that I haven't actually got in front of me. We've got Bonita, who's our little bunny. I thought we'd put a bunny in there for spring. For Easter's literally 2 weeks away. I can't believe it. Ridiculous how fast this year's going. And then we've also got our kitty here, which is really gorgeous. So here in a hot air balloon, and then sitting on top of the parcels here. And I'll do this one another time, I think, because I'm dying to colour this one. But I think what we'll do today, I want to just colour the little mouse, because I thought this one might be the one that, in terms of kind of what colours to pick and everything else, that's the one that you might struggle with the most, maybe. So in front of me here on my desk, I actually have my distress inks. Now you can get your little tiny cube distress inks, your little tiny ones, and also the other thing that you can get are your re-inkers as well. Now a lot of people who use distress inks to colour with prefer to use the re-inkers, really because of cost. You use the tiniest amount, but because it's just a pure ink here, it's actually a little bit easy to use. So you might find that if you've got any of these and you're not using them, this is a really great way to use them. I'm going to use a mix of both because I don't have re-inkers in every single colour, although I do have a lot. And what I'm going to do, what I've done first of all is I've had to replenish all of mine, obviously after the fire. So I just kind of did that quite recently. So as always, you know, this is the thing that I always tell you, and I know a lot of you ignore me, but you must do a colour chart because you have no idea what these colours are. You know, you've got different pinks and purples in here, and once you actually start to add water, they come out completely different. You know, we've got wilted violet over here, and then shaded lilac. Well, they're two completely different types of purple. So you have to do your colour card like this to actually understand what colours to pick. And the one thing I would say is, you know, pick out, you know, your colours before you start. Because if you don't, you get all confused and you pick the wrong colours up and everything. I do anyway. You know, if I've currently got 2, 4, 6, 8... I've got 10 re-inkers on my desk and I've got 2 ink pads. Why I got 10 out, I don't know. I've got 3 blues, which, you know, to colour them out, I don't know if I'm even going to use a blue yet. I've not decided. But, you know, it's just adding to confusion. So if you actually do this, you know, you can look and you can think, okay, well, I'm doing a mouse, therefore I'm going to need my brown. And just get 3 or 4 out on your desk at a time, and then you're not going to overwhelm yourself. Very often, less is more with colouring. You know, the fewer colours you use, and you've heard me say it before, 3 to 5 colours is kind of all you need, and that's it. Literally, you don't really need any more than that. I've just realised I've not actually brought a palette up to work on, but anyway, I've got a cello bag here. Just bear with me. I've just dropped some paper in the water, so it's all starting off swimmingly well as usual. So I'm just going to put a card bag here underneath my work. So the first colour that I'm going to use is good old vintage photo, okay? And I don't have a re-inker. How I don't have a re-inker for vintage photo, I've no idea. Now, the other thing is, when you're working with the distress inks, just make sure that you do put the lid back on your inks. In terms of brushes, use whatever brush you want to use. I use a variety of different paintbrushes. In fact, on my desk right now, I actually have about 10 different brushes, okay? And to be honest, I probably only use the same 2 or 3, but I just like to have them around me. I use my Zig watercolor brushes all the time, but I have to say, for this, I'm not going to use them. I tend not to actually put the water in them so much. And I like to, with this technique, you'll see that you actually don't need a lot of water. You work quite dry. I've also got this brush, which a few of you have seen me use this and have asked me about it. In fact, I've got another one as well. I've got a bigger one. Okay, so this is, I love these brushes. Now, you've asked me where I got these. These are actually from, I got these from Jackson's Art Supplies. You can get these on Amazon. They're not horrendously expensive, but you can tell by looking at them that they, you know, they're not your standard paintbrush. And vegans and vegetarians, look away, I'm sorry, but these are actually pure squirrel hair, these brushes. And I don't think of them as squirrel hair, although I do like to stroke them. But I like to think of them that they're from good squirrel hair, not bad squirrel hair. So I'm sorry if you really hate me for using these, but they are really traditional watercolor brushes, and the reason being that the fur, the actual bristles, holds the water unbelievably well. It's just a completely different experience to actually watercolor with these. So if you don't have a problem with it, I really recommend you get them. But if I think they're about, I think the small one's probably about £10, and I think this one was maybe like 15, something like that. They vary in price, just from a good art shop basically, or go on Amazon. I think I got mine off Amazon. But you can get synthetic versions of this as well. So, you know, it's entirely up to you. To be honest, when I bought it, I didn't know it was real. I actually just looked at it, and because I have no idea about brushes. But anyway, a few of you asked me what they are, so now you know if you see me using those. And I'm, like I say, I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody. The other things, the other brushes that I've got is I have this one, which this is just a synthetic brush. What happens with synthetic ones, as you just saw, is you do get hairs that fall out. This is a number 4, and it's quite a flat one. This is like an acrylic brush, but it's quite good for blending, because acrylic brushes are a lot stronger. And then I also have these ones now. These are minuscule brushes. Can you see? Look, if I put it next to my finger, look how tiny this brush is. And this is a small brush. Here's my Zig pen. And look at the difference there. You can see how small and tiny it is. Now these, I have to say, this is a size 10 and this is a size 20. So the higher the number, the finer it goes, I think. I have to say, these are detail brushes. I'm going to show you the packaging. I got this on Amazon. No idea how much they were. But you can see how many I got in here. I've just taken 2 out of those. But look at all these fine details. And this is really why I got them, because they were actually quite cheap. And I just really wanted to get a fine detail brush. When you do distress inks, we're going to actually blend. We're going to blend rather than paint, really. A little bit of a mixture of both, but mainly blending. So anyway, let's get to it. But it's about the tools sometimes. So I just want to explain to you why you need specific things. But you're going to see as we go on. I'm going to take my vintage photo. And I'm going to take that brush. And you're going to need, what you're going to need is a baby wipe. Okay, a wet baby wipe. And you're going to need some dry tissue. Okay, and just have those with you. And you're going to find that it's unbelievable how little water you're actually going to use. So all I'm doing is I'm actually making my brush a little bit damp. And then the way I actually like to work is I take my paintbrush right down into the bottom of the ink pad. Look, can you see? And you take it, you just basically, it's an easier way of actually getting ink on there. You can go on the top of your ink pad. But if you think about it, it all tends to drain to the bottom, so it'll be a bit juicier at the bottom. Because I've got this light on here, I'm going to just try and cover this as I work. So this amount of ink here is going to go an incredibly long way. So all I'm going to do is just kind of go around the outside here. And I'm just going to add that ink. Okay, and you can see how far that's going. And remember, I haven't actually dipped my brush in the water. So I've got my wet baby wipe here. And now I'm just going to blend this. Now I have to admit that these brushes aren't lasting as long as I hoped they would. So you can blend and blend and blend. Okay, and this is going to get you kind of that really nice, smooth, seamless kind of look. And then you just go back and just edge a little bit more if you need the colour a little bit deeper. Now, because there isn't much on that brush, I am just going to add a little bit of water in there. And obviously the more water, if you just add a little tiny bit of water, look, it's going to start actually blending it out. Now this particular paper that I've got, this is, you see, look, I've added too much now, too much water. So it's starting to go a bit like a watercolor. But that's okay, because what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take a bit more water and just blend that right into the middle. And I don't want, the whole key with this is not to have too much colour. You see how we've covered that really big area already? Okay, now this paper is starting to pill a little bit as I actually manipulate it, as I actually build that up and blend a bit more. It is, can you see it's all starting to lift off a little bit? But don't worry too much about that, because you can just actually dry that and it'll just lift off a little bit. So if you just take your dry tissue, can you see how that just actually comes away? Now what you can do here, we're going to go, in fact what we'll do is we'll go all the way around. I want to do this from start to finish for you, rather than kind of having one half done. So, but can you see how little I'm actually putting on here? How little you really need. And there's really not. This is actually more about being patient and time than it is about skill level, I think. So, we'll just blend that out. So just little tiny blends, and you can go around in a circle if you want to. It's up to you. And just remember to use your baby wipe and just not to spread too much colour at once. That's the key. You don't want a huge amount of colour because they go so far. And then I'm dipping my brush in my water to actually clean my brush off. Look, so now I've got nothing on there at all. And I'm just, because this is actually, I've got a bit too much in here. So I'm just going to blend that out now, because this is a little tip. If you actually end up with too much colour there, I put way too much ink on there. And it will take you a little bit of getting used to. Just then use that water to blend that out a bit. And then take your tissue and just dab, okay? You see there, look, it's taken all that excess off. And now that actually doesn't look like I've got too much on there. And it's also keeping it quite dry. This is quite dry already. So it's less is more. And if you've never done this before, I guarantee you're going to actually use too much ink. Okay. So just literally a little bit in there. And a good idea is to actually, with your ink pad, just actually then run your brush on the edge there, and it'll just take any excess off. So I'm just going to come back and just don't have that paintbrush too wet if you can help it. And I'm just going to lift that, and it's minuscule. This has to be one of the most economical ways of colouring, because you use a minuscule amount of ink. And I'm sure there's people out there that do this in a very different way. They're screeching at me and saying, that's not how you do it, that's not how you do it. I don't really care how anyone else does it, and I do it the way that I do it, and I like doing it this way. So I'm not saying it's the right way, all I'm doing is showing you how I do it. So, you know, if you do it a different way and you get a better result, that's fine. And this is my way. And that's what we all need to accept as crafters, instead of always trying to be the best and trying to be better than everybody else. It doesn't matter. Okay, so this ear is a little bit lighter, but it's okay. So I'm just gonna, again, I've got ink on that brush, so I'm going to take that ink off, and now I'm going to come back and just blend. And I know some people, you probably work with a much drier brush than me, and which I have to say, your brush will make a big difference, whatever brush you actually decide to use. So when you want to actually blend it out a bit more, just wet that paper a bit more. That's what I do anyway, because it's easier. You can just, I know a lot of people would just blend and blend and blend and go around and around with a very, very dry brush, and that gives you a really, really soft look. But I kind of find it's a little bit too time consuming for me. I like to just use that bit of water and blend it out very softly. It's very therapeutic. You kind of get lost in what you're doing, really. So you can see I'm not doing anything major. All I'm doing is flicking stroke, just doing a few little flicks of strokes. Washing my brush onto my baby wipe and then drying it off. And as you're blending, you know, really all you're doing is kind of just trying to feather that ink out a little bit in the softest way that you possibly can. So you get, just to show you, I took the ink from the top of the ink pad there. Tiny, tiny. It always amazes me how little you actually need. I'm trying to make sure I don't get my hand in the way. Do you know, I have no idea if this video is even running. I didn't actually do a test beforehand. I think it is. I can see it on my Mac screen, but I don't know if anybody's actually watching, but never mind. You can watch at your leisure later. I just had... So dry your brush and then wet your brush. Tiny, tiny little bits. And you can actually brush it back. You can, not brush it, you can blend it back a little bit if you want to. Okay, so I'm going to do the body. So I want to go round, all the way round with this, first of all, before we kind of do anything else, because I want to get the same colour going all the way around. So just do his body under here, so his arms. Now this is where you need to be really careful, because we've got a really tiny little area here, so don't go too mad. So I'm going to just put a little bit under his chin. So the best thing I can sort of say to you is maybe try doing the bits that are going to be shaded. So this bit here is going to be shaded. So where you're going to have a shadow, so we'll do under his tummy here. Oops. So under there, under his tummy, and I'm just gonna wet this a little bit and brush this a bit dry. And maybe this is what I'm not so keen on with these brushes. Can you actually see here? If you can see that, you can probably find a better brush, and I'm sure Tracy's got a better brush. I'm eternally in search of the best one. I thought this was going to be it, but I don't think it is. They are okay, they're quite good, and for the price of them, they were quite cheap for like 6 or 7 brushes, whatever I got. But can you see how the ends are splaying out a bit? And that's because I'm kind of pushing it constantly all the time. And actually, you kind of need, for this, a synthetic brush, I think, is probably better than a natural one anyway, because the synthetic brushes will probably be a bit stiffer. You probably need a slightly stiffer brush for this. Okay, so I'm just going to get rid of that colour, because we don't want a lot of colour here in this area. And I'm just going to blend that out. So tiny, just, you know, your brush is barely damp, really. If you over wet it, you're just going to end up kind of having to dry it off anyway with that tissue. But you've got your tissue there at the side of you, or a cotton cloth, something like that. Microfiber cloth's really good. I quite often use microfiber cloth. But can you see there how I've just blended that away? So look how much white we're actually leaving. And in here, this is actually the white of the paper. I haven't even touched that. Oh, I've just missed his hand, look. His paw. Now, those of you also concerned about how your printer ink doesn't run, just, you know, if you have a problem with yours, then just print on draft. You can see my ink's not running. All I did was I just printed normal. I've got a Canon printer, and that's all I've used. So we've kind of gone all the way around, but what I want to do, you see how here, when we first started, I've kind of come in a little bit here. I need to do that a little bit more on the other side of his face. So we're going to add a little bit more colour over here. Now, can you see now I'm kind of starting to flick this? So it's like little tiny flicks and strokes. And this is actually going to help to create his fur. Now, I must admit, this is the first time I've actually coloured one of these mice. I haven't even had a dummy run at this, so it might turn into a bit of a disaster. I didn't think about that. These things do happen. But anyway, and I've just noticed what I've actually done, but never mind. So, okay, we've got here, we've kind of got like his, like the arch of his eye, if you like. So I want it to look here like we've got some fur going on. So I'm just going to do long flicks here from that centre of his nose and just build them up. You've got a lot of ink on your paintbrush, so use that ink and just keep building it up. And you'll get that really nice soft look. And just follow this arch around the contour of this arch here. Can you see it starting to build up? And just don't go to just... I'm barely brushing this ink pad onto my brush. Do a little bit more maybe. And I'm barely touching the paper with my brush. So the lightest touch. And it might be worth actually just practicing that on a piece of scrap before you actually start. So I want it to kind of get a bit darker as I go. And remember, you've got the contour of his face here as well, so his head. So it's kind of going to go, you want it to come round. So this arch here, we want that to come round. And then kind of the centre bit here is going to be more or less straight up and down. And then as you come back round here, it's going to arch around the other way. But kind of try not to get like really heavy. What I mean is, so if I'm kind of working, wherever you put that first point, that's going to be your darkest point. So just be careful where you put that point down. So you want to have the finest feather line that you can, really. So really nice and feathery. So we can go a little bit darker in here. And can you see how I'm doing quite long strokes as well? And I'm hardly putting any ink down. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bit of moisture off my baby wipe, and rather than putting any more ink on, because there's actually already quite a lot of ink on here, and look, can you see what I'm doing now? I'm going to press my brush into that baby wipe just to get a bit of moisture on there, and look what happens. The moisture then pulls the ink and actually lets me create those lines without actually putting any more ink actually on there. If your baby wipe gets a little bit dry, just put a little bit of water on there with your brush and then just use that area. So it's kind of it's a little bit painstaking, but it's actually totally worth it. I'm just going to put a little bit more water on. I'd spend time going a bit slower, to be honest, if I was doing it for myself. But because you guys are here, and then I just want to... I'm sorry if you can hear my stomach grumbling. See what I mean? Because I've wet that, it's suddenly starting to get a lot heavier on the strokes. But that's okay. It's coming in quite nicely. Can you see how I'm holding my brush quite a long way down. It's giving me a lot of control over the fineness, and I know Alice teaches you that on her colouring classes. Alice Keegan over at Kit and Clowder, so that's how she gets a lot of control in what she does too. So kind of hold your brush quite low down. If you've got any like weird little gaps, try and just fill those in. And we're just getting a little bit of fur starting to build up. But it's that control by working on that baby wipe, which is just damp. It's giving you the control, so you're getting all of those really nice little furry hairs coming through. Furry hairs. I'm going to just do a few around here. Don't want too many around here. And then I'm going to just, can you see as well how another thing is turn your work as well. So I want to just have a few coming in this side, because we haven't really done this side. We've spent more time on this side. And just be careful not to overdo it. It's very easy to get too carried away. And just, if you end up with any kind of harsh lines, I've got a little blurb there, look. Just blend that out. That one. And if you've got anything, you know, you can blend this away, so don't worry too much about it. I'm going to create just that little arch around his eye. And the same over this side. I'm just going to grab a little bit more water. When you're blending, just remember you need the water to blend. If you need, you know, or you can add that water to blend it out. Like here, I've come a little bit too far in. So I'm just going to blend that away a little bit. And down here it's a little bit too. Just add a bit of water here. And it's quite a good way to actually erase mistakes sometimes. So don't forget you've got that dry tissue. But what you have to remember is to actually clean your brush if you're going to do that. I just don't want that coming in too far there. So I'm just going to blend that away, look. So we've got that little bit of colour there. And remember to just match it around the other side as well. And then I'm just going to dry that off. Because remember, if you don't dry it, it's going to keep working. So we're going to, where we've got his ears, we need to just create a bit of texture where his ears are. And again, my brush is quite wet now, so look, it's going quite dark. How many minutes are we on this video? I have no idea. Have I even started the video? I think so. I hope so. I hope I ain't talking to myself. Okay, I'm not going to worry too much about the inside of his ears, because we're going to come back and actually shade that in a second. But I want to do a little bit more down here. I'm just doing a little bit something on my brush there. It's just a little bit, it's that paper peeling off, so don't worry too much about it. But just remember it has furry arms as well. You don't need a lot. You really don't need much at all. Okay, so let me think what we're going to do. So I just want to maybe get a little bit darker in here, just to get a little bit of definition. Okay, so I'm going to let that meet his nose, and I'm just going to tiny bit, not too much. So I'm just wetting my brush a little bit. That's it. I don't want to put any more in there. Okay. So, just going to put my lid back on there. So, what I want to do now is I'm going to actually make his ears pink. We need to have some nice little pink ears. So, I'm going to take my Distress ink, re-inker. And this is actually picked raspberry. Now, this colour is so intense. If I just actually... Now, all you're going to do... this is... When I first started using these, I would actually blob a bit onto my surface like this. This is... Look how much colour's on here. You don't even need this. You're just going to waste it. Okay, so don't do that. You really don't need to. If you really want to, you can do. And to be honest, you could actually pick up colour out of this anyway and reuse it. But the way that I tend to work is I just lift the stopper out a little bit. I hope you can see that. It's got a bit of shadow. And then I just literally dab the end of my brush onto the stopper and pick up the tiniest bit of ink. And then I actually put it on my palette like this. Okay, and that's how I work. And that's like way more than enough ink than what I actually need. But this is why I end up getting really messy. And then what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of water into that. And then this is why I actually have some spare card, because I want to see the colour next to it. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pick up tiny little speck of colour. That's all I need, that tiny little speck there. And this is a really strong colour. But it's beautiful. I love this colour. And I actually prefer this to the sponge sugar. I know most people would probably use sponge sugar, but I actually like this colour better. So again, we're going to go back to the baby wipe to blend. And it just helps you control how much water you put on, because otherwise you're going to end up just flooding it. And that's when you actually lose some of that pale centre. Now, I actually want a little bit more in there. I've gone a bit too. So you can build it up, because less is more. So you're better off putting on less and then building it up if you want to. Okay. And don't beat yourself up about it either with your colouring. It's very competitive. It should be enjoyable. It's all about enjoying it. I'm just sitting here having a good time. I don't care if there's haters out there that think I'm not very good at colouring. It really doesn't bother me at all. That's not why I colour. I colour for myself, not for anybody else. It's great that I can share it with you guys. And I know a lot of you love kind of seeing me colour and stuff. And I'm so humbled by that. I think it's amazing that you all think it's lovely. But don't get hung up on it. It doesn't matter. It's about making at the end of the day and doing something for you. So I'm just going to pick that up, and I think a little mouse has a little pink nose. So we'll give him a little pink nose. And what I do want to do is I'm going to give him a tiny little bit of pink just on his tummy down here. And I'm going to give him some little pink feet. And again, you can just build that up if you want to. If you want something if you want a little bit more, just build that up. Maybe a tiny bit more in his nose. Don't want to go too much on there. It is quite a bright colour. And what I do want to do is I'm going back into that colour. I added a bit of water into that colour, remember? So this is actually a little bit blended out. So what I am going to do is I want some nice pink cheeks. So I'm going to come out here, and what I tend to do is do a spot there and a spot there. And my brush is really dry here. So all I'm doing is just pushing that ink. So this is like if you had your distressed dauber and it's just literally like colouring with that, okay? Pick a bit more of that ink up. There. This, honestly, it's so dry. What I'm blending here is so dry. And it's just, and this is why my brushes aren't lasting very long. And this is why you kind of need to find that really good brush if you can. And just put a little bit more of that on. It's not quite gone as far as I hoped. Now this might go wrong now because I've added a lot more in there. But you can take it. And this is the one time when I don't mind if you do round rosy cheeks. Those of you that know that I hate round rosy cheeks, you're allowed. I just want it to spread a little bit more. I just want that real softness and just this very, very slight pink coming out. Just want it spreading a little bit more. I sometimes think you can't actually go, as long as it's blended beautifully, I sometimes think you can't actually go too bright on cheeks. When it's a character like this, it's just adorable. So you just want it really smooth. What we don't want is one of those Aunt Sally cheeks. That's what we don't really want. But as long as it's really nicely blended out. Tiny, tiny bit more. Just don't. Once you reach a point that's kind of okay, don't overdo it, because you know that's when you start going wrong. But I'm just really all I'm doing is actually moving it around. How cute! Okay, I'm perfectly happy with that, and this is really dry, really, really dry. Okay, so basically all we've done is use 2 colours so far. And this is what I was saying to you before about limiting the number of colours you use. Because then what that does is it actually encourages you to build up the colour. Oops. So what I'm going to do is I'm coming back to my vintage photo. And you could use walnut stain if you want. This it's fine. I just couldn't find my walnut stain ink pad, to be honest. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come back. And I'm going to just darken up some of these edges a little bit. And just make it, you know, just finish him off a little bit. So we'll just, where we've got the ears are behind. So now because I'm going darker, I'm actually being a little bit more ruthless with my ink. We've already kind of we've undercoated, and now we're kind of putting the finishing touches on, if you like. So what I want now is I'm going to add a little bit more water. And I'm going to flick this round. So I'm just going to get a bit of ink here. So I want a bit of vintage photo ink here. So you can see there's quite a bit in there. And I'm just going to literally add a tiny little drop of water. And use this just to flick this around. And also, it's going to enable me just to create some hairs in his ears. Her ears, his ears. Her ears, Maisie. And it just means we can then actually blend a little bit of the brown into the ear, and it actually makes it just a bit more realistic. We can actually start to shade a little bit more. Okay, I'm just going to drag that back through there as well, and I want it just to go a little bit darker around this hairline. Not too much, just add a little bit more definition, because you'll grow in confidence as you kind of do this. You'll get a bit more confident with what you're doing. And we didn't really give her much definition around her chin here. Yeah, I don't know if you can even see that on the screen, but she's actually got tiny little hairs now all around the base of her chin, which is just going to help to kind of add that definition. Sorry. So now what I'm going to do is do something quite scary, and I'm going to use my black soot. Okay, and this time I'm going to put that onto my mat here. Now, when you start using this, less is definitely more, okay? So, the ear is behind the rest of the head. So we want to add that shade. It's what makes it go backwards. Look at the difference there. That actually now is behind the head, and it's given us all of this definition here. So the same with this one. You can see how dry my brush is. And also what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pull that in to here. So we're just going to add a little tiny bit of shadow just behind where that hair, see where that fur's like sitting in front. We're just tiny little bit, not too much. And then we're going to, I just need a tiny drop of water again, just to make that, it's just to make my brush damp more than anything. Just take that off. And you're just going to stroke around there. And then we're just going to put a tiny shadow around there. Tiny shadow around here. So you can see all I'm doing is flicks. I'm not doing anything difficult. Anybody can do this. It's tiny little flicks of the brush. That's all we're doing. And all I'm doing is following the contour of the image. I really hope you can see that, because I really want this to be so, I want you all to be able to do this. Just going to make my brush a bit damp again, because don't forget, you need that control. So don't just keep layering and layering and layering the ink. A lot of it's just about having that water. So once you've reached a point where you feel like you've put a lot of ink on, just wet your brush and go back and blend it. And you see how it's like starting to blend together. So I'm actually creating that depth without adding any more colour there whatsoever. And then a little bit more water. Just going to bring that around here, blend this in a little bit more under here. If you've got a little, I don't know how that's happened there, I've got a little dewberry there. Just use your tissue. I don't know where mine went, I think I've dropped it on the floor. This is where you need to kind of be a little bit, never mind. It's got a little something there now, never mind. Now we're going to put some of this black right underneath his chin, her chin. I keep calling him. It's her, it's Maisie Mouse. Okay. And that now, move my wet thing. That now makes her head come really forward. So we're just going to blend that shadow out because we want it to look natural. And we're going to just put a little bit under her arm here and in there. Sorry, I keep going off the bottom of my screen. And you almost can't go. Don't be worried about going too dark under there. The darker you actually make that, the more 3D her head pops out. Can you see what I mean? Look at how that now is starting to really come to the front. So pushing the body back and bringing the head right forward. And we need to do the same here. Where she's sitting down and round the back here. So this is now, you're actually covering up the brown here really. You don't really even need any brown. But we want her foot to come forward here. And she's actually got something in front of her. So again, this foot needs to come forward. So we're going to put a bit of shade in here. Don't be scared to just blend that down a bit. You know, this is so dry, it's actually going on grey. So it's like finer than you could even get with a pencil. So what I'm actually doing, I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to hold that up a bit further. Can you see how that's actually starting to create those like little feathers into her stomach, into like the front of her tummy? So it kind of like brings that fur, so it makes it look more furry. And again, her arm's under there as well, don't forget. So, you know, you want that arm to go back there. Because at the moment it looks like it's poking out above. And you don't want that. So her arm's actually right underneath. It's just about getting that shade in the right places. So right under the chin. And actually this bit here of her arm is even further back than this arm is because it's behind. So you can go really dark there at that point. And if you want to, you could just do like a harder line there. And then again, where her foot is here, you kind of need a bit of shadow just at the base of her foot. And behind, anywhere where it's kind of going to be underneath. Now our little card, I might leave that white because most of the time cards are white. So we're going to add a little shadow here where her hand's actually holding it. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a little shadow where she's sitting. Now this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit more water. Okay. So we've got an envelope. So we'll do a little, and we've got a gift. So we're going to bring the paintbrush to the side of the envelope. Just create that little bit of shadow. That's all it needs to be. It doesn't need to be any more than that. It's just a hint. And then we'll blend that out. So all I'm doing here is just adding water. And we're going to make this really soft. And this is what I love about Distress Inks, look how soft this can now be when we actually add that water in. So just flood that in and it'll just pull all of that ink away and enable you just to create something for it to sit on. So it just grounds the whole image, and we'll just dry that. And then what we'll do is where her card is here, we'll just actually make that slightly shadowed. We'll make a slight tint on her pen where she's going to write her pen. Maybe I'll just touch more under there. We'll add a little bit of shadow. This is the inside of her envelope here, look. Now you can see I'm actually colouring this quite heavily, and that's because my brush is actually now wet. So I need to just dry that back again. You get a little bit carried away. So I just want to tint this slightly, this envelope. And then I think what we'll do, just to make the little gift pop a little bit, we'll just use a tiny little bit of, oops, sorry, I'm going to use a tiny bit of peacock feather. So I'm just taking that again off that re-inker. And it's literally a pinhead of ink that you need when you're doing this. Look how rich that colour is. And I'm just going to blend that out on, and because I just want that blending. I just want that tiny little hint of colour there. Don't want too much. And then what we'll do is we'll use that pink again. In fact, I'm not even going to take any from there. This is still on this paper and it's still wet. That's how much I've used that I don't need. And then what we'll do is we'll just use that to colour our little ribbon there. And we'll just colour in. She's got a little flower on our card there. Colour that in. And if you want to kind of play a bit more and just add a little bit more definition here, you can do. Might just blend her tummy out there a bit. It's a little bit heavy. So let's just blend that. I'm just using a bit of water there because that ink's been on there a while. I'm just using a bit of water just to soften that a bit. And then what I'm going to do is I just want to come back with a little bit more black. Just feel like I've lost a bit of definition. So because this brush is so fine, what we can do now is just add in a bit more fur. So we'll just to add a tiny bit of definition. So the slightest touch here. We don't want too much at all, because if you that black soot is really intense. So if you go too heavy with it, you'll end up regretting it. Look, I've just done it there. Look. If that happens, all you need to do is go back with your brown. Clean your brush off. That's the thing you have to remember, is to keep cleaning that brush. And then go back in with that brown. And then you can blend that back out, hopefully. Now the reason I'm not too worried about that, we're about there. I think we're there now. I don't want to do any more. I think if I do any more, I'm going to ruin it. So the one last little touch that I want to do, I'm going to take my white pen. I'm going to actually use my Posca pen. I've got several white pens. And I really like the Posca. This is really super fine. Look how fine this is. It's like a ballpoint pen. So all I'm going to do now is I just want to actually add some highlights back in. So just work back around that nose, and you can do some around here if you want to. Now, one thing that you can do there, see how that was quite heavy? Just dab over it. Don't smudge it. Just dab over it with your finger as you're working. You need to work quite quick, do that quite quickly, and it'll just soften it a little bit. So you see there where I kind of had that little boo-boo that didn't quite work out. We can cover that up now. And this is what I did on the hedgehog actually as well. So on those hedgehog spines, I'll show you in a second. So if you feel like you've missed a bit around the ears here, Just soften them. And it's nice because it adds just a tiny little highlight. So it kind of picks up that fur. You see the difference that's actually making. I hope you can see it. You will in a sec when I show you back to. And a few down here maybe. Don't mess about too much because you end up ruining it if you're not careful. That's my biggest thing, is that I do ruin things. A little bit in there. Tiny bit there. And what we'll do is we'll just put some little dots on the parcel. And actually, I think I'm quite happy with that. What I might do is just do a little tiny sweet spot just on her cheek there. And that's it. I'm not doing any more. So there you go. So you can see there how much that white pen's actually made a big difference. In fact, actually on the camera it looks a bit harsher than it is. If you do go a bit, if it's a bit harsh, just go back. So if you find that you've put a bit too much on, like there, maybe just on her nose, I could maybe just do to soften that. This will actually sit over it a little bit. And also the other thing is that Posca pen is also water-based. So what you can do is you can soften that a little bit, look. You see what I mean? And in fact, what I might do, just there, see like round her eye here, this is just, you see, this is what I mean, you end up going on and on and on, you have to be careful. But I just want a little bit of shading in here, just to follow that arch around, just a tiny bit. And it'll just, you see like here we've got quite a nice shade. I've just missed it on that side, so let's just, and it's all the like little tiny bits of attention, like her nose isn't actually looking very 3D. So what I'm going to do here, just going to go around that, just create a little tiny shadow. Just wet my brush, and I'm doing it with the vintage photo. I don't want it to, I don't want a grey shadow there at all. And the other thing is that I like to do is I just like to set it up. See, look what's happened now. Okay, right, this is where, this is a good little, so what I've done now, because there's quite, when I've printed this, there's quite a bit of ink in their eye, obviously, so just be careful. So I just flooded that a little bit, but I'll use it to my advantage. And if you make a mistake on one side like that, do it on the other side. And just blend that out. And then it looks like it was meant to be. It looks like it's intentional. Just get rid of that a little bit. Okay, right, I need to leave it alone. I just need to blend that just a tiny bit. It's got a bit heavy. We've now just got that bit of shadow where her nose is, which kind of just makes it look a little bit more rounded and a bit more 3D. What I meant to do was actually go into her nose there rather than, that's it. So just meant to make her nose pop a little bit. Okay, so I hope you like her. So that's little Maisie writing her a little card, or a little greeting card. I wonder who she's going to send that to. So anybody that comments on this video, what I'll do is I'll put you all into a random draw and I'll pick someone out and I'll send you this. So I hope you've really enjoyed that. I've enjoyed colouring it. It's so relaxing doing distress inks. I enjoy it much more than using markers and pencils. I just think the results you get are amazing. So hopefully you've kind of learned something, or I've just inspired you to have a go, or to get your inks out if you haven't had them for a while. So that's it, over and out for now. I'm going to go and get a coffee now. Okay, I'll see you soon.